Ready to hear about something that sounds like the plot of a B-movie, but it's real? The USDA has been fighting a war against flesh-eating maggots and mostly winning, but Team Trump has recently joined this war on the side of the maggots. At the rate they're currently spreading, they should arrive in the US in about 2 or 3 years. Pardon the candlelight, I'm not trying to do like a spooky stories, it's just I don't have good lights right now, so we're making do with candles. It's late. It's a really cool story about science, sustainable agriculture, and international cooperation. Screwworm eradication is saving US ranchers in southern states like Texas and Florida about $1 billion a year, or at least it will until screwworm comes back. True to form, Trump is screwing it up. Here's a screwworm. It is related to other meat-eating flies, but most of them are scavengers. They're nature's cleanup crew. They wait for something to die, then they lay eggs on the carcass. But screwworms are not that patient. They lay their eggs on live animals with open wounds. Just a scratch is big enough for them to get an egg into, and once those eggs hatch, the larvae kind of head straight down into the animal. They like to burrow, and they're kind of shaped like a screw, so that's why we call them screwworm. Screwworms mostly go after cattle and other large mammals like deer, but they will go for people when the opportunity is right. Screwworm is native to the southern half of the United States, and if you've never heard of them before, that is your federal tax dollars at work. In the 18 and 1900s, screwworm got so many cattle that ranchers, especially way down in Texas and Florida, were getting hammered. People really hoped that insecticides and cattle dips would get screwworms under control, but they just didn't. So one day, one kid on a Texas ranch named Edward Nippling got sick and tired of patching up cattle that had been hit by screwworm on his family's ranch because it was gross and sad. Now, luckily for the world, Ed was also a giant nerd. He grew up, got a job with the USDA, and spent a lot of time watching screwworm flies have sex. Now, this is exactly the kind of science that DOGE is defunding right now, but it led to a breakthrough. Nippling found that lady screwworms only mate once. They're really focused on their career, which is laying thousands of eggs as soon as possible because they don't live very long, about a month. And that doesn't leave them much time for romance. So this quirk of screwworm biology was something we could use against them. USDA scientists figured out how to raise male screwworms, dose them with just enough cancer treatment grade radiation to leave them healthy but sterile, and then dump millions of them out of airplanes. That way, most female screwworms would only meet sterile males. They'd only mate once, and populations would soon crash. This is a very tidy, sustainable solution. There are no pesticides. There's no waiting for cattle to get infested with flies and chasing them down for treatment, just birth control for bugs. And after test runs successfully eliminated screwworms from a couple of islands in the Caribbean, the USDA was ready to take this show on the road. Now at first, USDA just planned to eradicate screwworms from the United States, because that's where the USDA works. But here's the thing, if you want to keep them gone, you have to keep releasing lots of sterile males every single day. You gotta flood the zone. And the US-Mexico border is really long. So flooding a zone that big with sterile males was cost prohibitive and very, very hard to do right. Screwworm kept breaking containment and, coming back into the US as a result. So folks said, what would be even better? What if we push these things all the way down to the Isthmus of Panama, the most skinny part of Central America? That way, there's only a narrow bottleneck that we need to constantly be carpet bombing with sterile male screwworms. That would be so much easier to keep up with. Now, eradicating screwworm throughout South America south of Panama would be a whole nother level of logistical challenge, by the way, that we as a species have not risen to yet. The Isthmus of Panama is the sweet spot for now. But experience proved them right. It is literally easier and cheaper for the United States to help out our neighbors in Central America and get rid of their screwworm problem too, than it is to only take care of ourselves. That's an important lesson that many Americans have forgotten. So in 1996, the US and Panama established COPEG. It's the Spanish acronym for the Panama-US Commission for the Eradication and Prevention of Screwworm. This place is magical. It's a literal flesh-eating maggot factory, but like the good kind. This building is the firewall that keeps screwworm out of Central and North America. It is one of the greatest public health interventions of the last century. It is a noble bastion of international cooperation for the good of all, and I also have it on good authority that it smells horrendous, because they're raising millions of flesh-eating maggots on meat chow that has to be kept at body temperature. It's science, it's not breakfast at Tiffany's over there. But that was then. Now, the Trump White House seems to be doing everything it can to make screwworm great again. In November 2024, when screwworm showed up in Mexico, the Biden administration hit pause on importing cattle from Mexico. It makes sense. One of the best ways to move screwworm long distance into a new country is moving affected cattle. But Trump ran on bringing down food prices. So in February of 2025, he reopened the US borders to Mexican cattle to bring beef prices down. And then in 2025, DOGE canceled a screwworm monitoring program that was run through USAID. So now we have even less information on where screwworm is and how serious it's getting throughout Central America. Now, since then, the Trump administration has kept flip-flopping on cattle imports from Mexico. They're allowed one day, banned the next, allowed in certain circumstances one day, banned in all the next. There is no plan here. It seems like our screwworm policy is, if Trump wakes up in the morning yelling about border security, then we don't import cattle from Mexico. But if he wakes up yelling about how cheeseburgers are too expensive, then we open the borders and import more cows. That's how much consistency we have here. Now, keeping screwworm out of the US and Central America means everyone has to be on the same page, working together consistently. And we have to know what our partners are doing so we can all do long-term planning and do our part. We in the United States are making that impossible right now. The US has traditionally funded and performed the airplane drops where we drop the sterile males all over the countryside, right? But that's kind of hard to do right now with Mexico because our president won't shut up about how he wants to do drone strikes and/or invade Mexico. That's not how you build trust. That's not how you collaborate. And it's definitely not how you get flexible access to another country's airspace to do a peacetime job right. It would also be great if the US ag sector had steady leadership at USDA to help us navigate this delicate situation. Someone who's here for agriculture, not politics. Someone who gets that, yeah, here in the United States, we're trying to keep screwworm from getting here. But Mexico's farmers are already dealing with it. We need someone who can express some kind of compassion about that and say, hey, we're trying to keep this out of here, but you guys are already dealing with the flesh-eating maggots. Maybe it'd be nice if they could say that. Someone who has experience handling livestock diseases and pest outbreaks in real life. Unfortunately, we have none of that. We have USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins, a lawyer and political hack who has never had a real job in agriculture. She's had a lot of jobs at reactionary think tanks, writing papers, but not solving problems. She's just tweeting mean letters at Mexico. So if you ever want to know how seriously Trump takes agriculture, this is the clown car passenger he has sent to take care of us. Because he knows it doesn't matter. He knows that most farmers are going to keep supporting him no matter what he does. So he knows he doesn't actually need to do anything for farms. Really makes you think. Have a good day.